Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We're so excited to be here today. Today's special guest is Tabitha. And Tabitha was a survivor of a TTI facility called Tranquility Bay, which was located in Jamaica. And we cannot wait to dive into this episode with Tabitha. So without further ado, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's so good to have you here.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
we really appreciate it. And we're so glad that you get the chance to share your story. We cannot wait to hear it.
Tabitha, if you wouldn't mind just giving us like a brief rundown of like where you're from, maybe how old you are now, and how you ended up in Tranquility Bay.
I'm originally from Michigan, but I currently live in Indiana. The whole crazy story. Ended up moving here with my husband. But I'm 37, was sent to Tranquility Bay in 2000. I'm an adoptee. So according to my parents, I was sent away for lying and manipulating. But if you ask my opinion, it's because I had trauma before I was adopted and they didn't want to deal with it. So instead of getting me help or dealing with like taking the time to deal with me, because I had two other adopted siblings, that they just sent me away to be somebody else's problem. So they didn't have to take the time out of their lives to try to help me deal with the trauma of before I was adopted, because I was an older adoptee. So most kids don't get adopted after a certain age because they get out of the cute phase and they have all the trauma that they remember. And I was 8 when I was adopted. So I had all the trauma from being taken away from my birth parents that I remembered and being in foster care. I'm not going to lie, I did lie and manipulate, but let's be honest, what teenager doesn't lie or try to manipulate their parents in some way, shape, or form? But I wasn't like I guess I hate the word troubled teen. I absolutely hate it. But I wasn't like a problem child. I didn't skip school. I was 12. So there's not too much I could have done. I didn't do drugs, any of that stuff. So that's why, in my opinion, I think it was just they didn't want to deal with the trauma that I had before and take the time to send me to therapy or do group or family counseling or any of that. So instead, they sent me to Tranquility Bay. And the crazy part about that is, if you know anything about WASP programs, this Tranquility Bay is often categorized as the worst WASP facility.
Right.
So they went immediately from she's a lying and manipulator to send me to the one program in the entire Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs that deals with the most, I'm going to put air quotations on this because troubled kids. But I want to make it clear, I hate when people say the troubled kids, because it half the time there are kids that need a little extra attention and need a little extra help. But I want to say 80% of the people that I met in the program didn't need a TTI program. They just needed a little extra support, a little extra therapy.
Your adopted parents, they obviously found out about the program from somewhere. Was it from a pastor? Was it from a judge, like a counselor?
For a long time, I wondered that. And it wasn't until I left the program that I learned it was from a family friend that lived with us, kind of. That's a whole nother long story I don't want to get into. But a family friend that kind of inserted herself into our lives and is still part of my parents' lives recommended that they send me to Tranquility Bay.
Oh,
There was a huge uproar among my family, my extended family, when this happened, because I had grandparents on both sides offering to take me to live with them. And instead, my parents were like, we know what's best for her, and sent me to Tranquility Bay instead.
I don't mind if you get off topic. We totally agree with you. Like the word troubled, it's really traumatized kids. Even the ones that are at the end of like into the drugs, the gangs, the on their way to jail, like you talked about, where it's just another way of expressing themselves, not right or bad. I'm not going to say anything about that, but just expressing themselves for all the awful stuff that happened. And you're right, where this should have been a place that helped you. Instead, it was a place that hurt you even more. And I just hate that for you. I'm so sorry. I mean, you should have been able to get the help for what happened before you were adopted through therapy and any medications or diagnosis that could truly help that. Instead, you were sent to hell. Ugh, that place is bad, man.
And that's such a good point that you make, Susie. Like to say and Tabitha too, like to even say troubled teens, it's really traumatized teens, because everyone that of the survivors that we've talked to has been affected in some way by trauma in their childhood, which then caused them to act out in their teenage years and their later adolescent years, which then caused their parents to be like, you're gone, we're sending you away, we don't want to deal with this, instead of actually like doing the work with them and getting them counseling and sitting down and figuring out, how can I help you, what's going on, like let's figure this out
Hmm.
together. I mean, you make a really good point, and I actually like that better, traumatized teen instead of troubled teen, because it makes total sense. So Tabitha, tell us a little bit about like your upbringing when you went into this home, this adopted family's home when you were 8. Were they involved in any kind of organized religion or organization that you had to become a part of at that point?
I mean, they're non-denominational Christian. We're a part of the IFB, but it wasn't that intense. But it was church twice on Sunday, once on Wednesday, youth group, Bible study, everything after that in my life that has happened since before. And I was very devout. I invited all my friends from school to Bible study. Some of them have continued being religious since then, and they weren't religious before. I was a very outgoing child. I made friends with everybody. I was friends with all walks. I got along with everybody. I was the one that had like 10 new friends come to Bible study, because then you get a reward if you invite enough people to Bible study. And I was always inviting all my friends and all that stuff. I was very into the religion before I got sent to Tranquility Bay. I do want to say that nowadays, though, I'm non-religious
Yeah,
for many factors.
I understand. So that's interesting that even, and the reason we asked that, that's not a, I don't know if you've ever had that question on any other podcasts or things you've done, but it seems like certain religions tend to push towards certain programs, maybe is a good way to say it. And so the fact, was Tranquility Bay like a religious one at all? Program?
No,
No, see,
it
it's
was ran
like,
by Robert Litchfield, who's Mormon, though, because all
oh,
the WASP programs were handled by Robert Litchfield, and he
ah,
is Mormon. A lot of times in the program, you don't see what happens even to the people that you spend every day with. I mean, it could have been pressed on another member, and I just want to make that clear that just because I didn't experience it at Tranquility Bay doesn't mean it wasn't
yeah.
experienced by another survivor of Tranquility Bay.
That's with everything,
So,
isn't it? How, like, the way they
Hmm.
treat kids.
yeah. So Tabitha, I'm curious, like, how did your adopted parents, like, how did they tell you, hey, you're going to this place and you have no choice? Or did you just get shipped onto a plane and sent off to Jamaica?
Well, my story is a little different than most of the ones I've heard. I know a lot of people who were kidnapped in the middle of the night and taken to the program. I, however, being sometime a lot for a long time, I blame myself for being so vulnerable and gullible. You'll find out in a minute, but it for a long time I did blame myself for not suspecting. But my parents told me I was going on vacation, that I was
Mm,
going to basically a camp for a year, and they had this whole brochure set out, and it said like water sports, and it had pictures of people at the ocean, and I mean it's Jamaica, so it basically
of
looked
course.
like a vacation, a tourist brochure, and I
Mhm.
was excited. I had a going away party with all of my friends from school that I still have a VH video of to this day. I haven't watched it since it happened.
Oh, that is terrible,
Um,
because I cannot believe your parents did that to you. How awful. I'm so sorry, Tabitha. That is horrific.
yeah. And then to make it worse, they sent me off on a plane by myself because they had a ski trip they had to get to. So I flew from Detroit to Miami and then switched planes, got from Miami to Jamaica by myself
On your own while you were
at 12.
12 years old.
So, what was it like when you arrived there? Did somebody greet you at the airport? Did they have like a car to pick you up and bring you to the facility? What was the first day like arriving?
Now, a lot of my program time is fuzzy. So a lot of the specific details my mind has blocked because 4.5 years was a long time and a lot of things happened. But from what I do remember from that day is I know that I was held with a airport staff member until the representative from Tranquility Bay got there, and they had a van And I don't remember any of the conversation or any of the events really in the vehicle on the way there.
It's overwhelming.
But I do remember that Jamaicans don't have a speed limit. So it was very terrifying because they're going on these narrow roads at like 100 miles an hour, and you feel like you're going to fall off the cliff. I do remember that when we pulled up at the gates is when I started to feel like something was wrong, because I was wondering why a camp needed security and gates. I was still thinking that I was at a camp and that I was going to basically be on vacation for a year. And then I remember that when I got there, I was strip searched. I remember being handed the rule book. But other than that, I don't remember much of my first day. I remember reading the rules and then it finally sank in. For a long time, I don't anymore, but I did blame myself for a long time that I didn't just run at the airport since there was nothing stopping me, and that I believed my parents. I was too trusting. That's really all I remember from the first day of getting there.
Oh, I'm so sorry. These were your caregivers and they should have been taking care of you. And when they see something like that, you think that that's what it really is, because it's hard to believe parents would ever lie. And to have them doing something like that to you is heartbreaking. And I'm so sorry you went through that.
So tell us a little bit about what you're able to remember, your experience at Tranquility Bay. Was it all girls? Was it girls and guys? What was the atmosphere there?
So Tranquility Bay, it does have male and females. However, they're separated. Looking at a member of the opposite sex is against the rules. When we walked, we had to stare at the person's neck behind us. And if you looked right, left, anywhere but the person's neck in front of you, you got in trouble. And then also looking at the ocean was called run plans. You could get in serious trouble for that. You were not allowed to look at the ocean, even though we were right on the ocean.
Oh my
What?
gosh.
Wow.
But yeah, it is a guy and girl facility. I'm not saying that I never looked at the guys, that I never got away with it, and that I never gonna get caught too. But there's times I got away with it. But that wasn't until I was a little bit older. At 12, I wasn't really that interested in guys yet. But as the years went on, it got a little bit more.
What kind of things what would they do to you? What was the punishment?
It depends on so there's levels of consequences. There's a category 1 and it goes all the way up to category 5. A category 1 is basically you just write on a piece of paper, it's self-correction. So you would have to write, this is what I did and this is how I will change it in the future. And then category 2 and 3, more like worksheets, which is where they put you in a room and you have to listen to a Dale Carnegie audio cassette, and then you have to write an essay on it. When I first got there, it was like a test, and it would have to answer questions about the audio tape that you heard. And it was always the same. So if you went into worksheets enough, you would just know the answers, which eventually I did. And then later when I was there, you had to write a so many word essay, and it had to be different each time about the audio, even though it was the same audio you'd hear. They just recycled the same ones over and over again by Dale Carnegie and some of the other inspirational. I can't even remember at this point. How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That's Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, see? Like, I could probably read that to you. Like, my mind just goes blank whenever I think about it. But back then, I could have probably read you the entire book. And then it was an essay. It was so many words you had to write about the audio that you heard and what it inspired or whatever in you, or just basically anything about it. And then category 4 and 5s are OP, which was observation placement. Observation placement is a room where you're watched 24/7. I mean, you're already watched 24/7, but this is like more intense. The staff to student ratio is much lower. It's like one staff for every 2 students versus normally it's one staff member, maybe 2 for 30. Basically, observation placement, you lay on your stomach, on your chin all day long with your arms by your side.
For your neck, your arms, your back, your chin.
Yeah, very few breaks of that. So you spend all day in there until you thought enough about your problem. But then the more unruly the consequence, you could also get restrained. So if you do something extreme with an attitude, You can get thrown to the ground, and like 2, 3, 4 Jamaicans are sitting on you, holding you in a stress position where your arms are all the way up on your back, almost all the way up to your neck, and your legs are pushed all the way to the middle of your back. And you have 3 or 4 men and women sitting on you, restraining you for whatever
Wow.
period of time they want to.
Wow.
So I don't personally remember being restrained. I know I was. And the reason I say that is because I have this mental block of it. But I have a friend who was at Tranquility Bay with me who said that one day I got smart in line, and she watched in horror as they yanked me out of line and restrained me in the courtyard on the concrete or on the asphalt. So I remember watching other people get restrained a lot. I do remember that. I think the trauma of my own restraints kind of have a trauma block up there that a lot of people are like, why don't you do EDMR? And I'm like, I don't really want to remember that bad. I remember enough to still be traumatized without having to remember the super traumatizing stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are the main consequences. During riots, I did see students get maced as well.
How many kids total were there at one time, like when there was a riot and stuff?
On the girls' side, for most of the time I was there, it was 4 families, and each family had about anywhere, depending on the time of year and how many, it was between 15 and 25 girls in each family.
Oh my gosh. So 100
Yeah, and then I know the guys had more than us. There was always more guys than there was girls.
a riot could be very big, and
Mhm.
really dangerous. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, a lot of people from the smaller schools always are amazed. I mean, WASP was a very big thing back in the 2000s when I was sent. It was,
Isn't it worldwide?
I didn't
It's like a
know until
worldwide
afterward. Yeah.
organization.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, they had Tranquility Bay in Jamaica, they had High Impact in Mexico, they had Costa by the Sea in Mexico, they had Dundee Ranch in, where was Dundee Ranch again? I don't quite remember, but then they had Spring Creek Lodge in the US, Cross Creek Manor in the US, Ivy Ridge. So
Wow.
I feel like I'm forgetting a couple there, but those are the ones I can remember at the moment.
So I'm always curious about, like, when we talk to other TTI survivors, a lot of them talk about the lack of education during their time within the TTI. Did you experience that at all?
So at Tranquility Bay, all of our education was self-paced. So basically,
Interesting.
there's a
Same.
teacher in the room, but we're all at different, you have to realize we're all different ages. I started in there in the middle of 7th grade. So I was in 7th grade, and then you have 17 and 18-year-olds there that are seniors in high school. So it was a self-paced thing. You would read a chapter in a book and then do a test on it. And you have to get at least 80% on that test in order to pass. But it's all self-taught. There's no classroom teaching. I kind of focused on my schoolwork really intensely when I first got there. I graduated about 2.5 years after I got there. So I was 15 when I graduated high school. But I have since learned that it was unaccredited. So my high school diploma means nothing. So yeah, there's that, fun times. But I do know, on the subject of education, after I finished high school, I begged my family representative to ask my parents for me to prep for the SATs, because when I got out, I was planning on staying there until I was 18. And when I got out, I wanted to be able to be set to go to college and be able to do something with my life. And my parents kept saying no to SAT prep, and you can't do anything like that without parents' permission because it costs them extra money to do it.
They could go
So, yeah.
skiing, but not actually help you do the SATs.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were there for 4.5 years when you were 12. So you got out when you were 17, you said?
I was 17.
17, okay. And how did you end up getting a chance to leave there? How did you get out?
Well, my parents actually brought me home for a family trip for my birthday. I cannot remember if it was my 16th or 17th birthday that they brought me home. It's kind of fuzzy because I can't remember if it was like 2 months before I left or a year and 2 months before I left. It's kind of wild how trauma works when it just kind of 4.5 years of being on a program just kind of go together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know I'm not alone. I know a lot of survivors, especially ones that spent longer times in the program, have trouble correlating what happened when. But my parents brought me home for one of my birthdays, and I think it was then that they realized I wasn't going to work the program.
Yeah.
I'm stubborn. I can hold out for a long time. But I think they finally realized that I wasn't going to work the program. But honestly, I don't know because my parents have never talked to me about it on why they eventually
Oh,
pulled
wow.
me instead of just having me wait until I was 18 and sign out myself. I mean, I had a journal with the countdown until I was 18 and like some unrealistic expectations of how much groceries were going to cost. All written in my journal for when I turned 18 and I signed myself out and I got $50 on a plane ticket to Miami. I really don't know. I don't know what finally pushed them to pull me. I just know that I woke up on March 26th of 2005 and basically I got told to pack my stuff and I thought I was going to like the only times I ever got to go off property is like when I went to the dentist. That was like the only medical care that my parents would pay for was the dentist for some reason.
So, did your parents pay a lot of money into this program for you to be
Mm.
there?
As far as I know, yes.
So, wouldn't
Oh.
it technically be the program's responsibility to pay for or have some basic
No, everything other than like food, housing cost extra.
like your glasses and stuff?
I didn't get new glasses while I was there, but
I've worn glasses since I was in second grade, and I had a brief time in my 30s when I had LASIK, but for the most part, they've gotten worse every year. I couldn't imagine being there 4.5 years without being able to see if your vision changed.
probably why I had so many headaches. But I mean,
Yeah.
so the only time I ever went off was for the dentist. Or and to
Wow.
get my passport, but that was 6 months after I got there. I was just as surprised as anybody. I don't think anybody thought I was getting pulled before I was 18,
So what was
including the
that
staff.
like? What was that like when you finally reunited with them? Did you guys
I didn't
ever?
reunite with my parents. No, no. I flew back to Michigan. And that family friend that recommended the program is the one that picked me up at the airport. I didn't see my parents at all. She took me to an apartment. And you have to remember, I had just turned 17. This was March 26th, and my birthday is January 13th. And I have been in the program since I was 12. So we
Yeah.
all know that the program doesn't teach any life skills. They don't
Right.
teach how to
And
cook. They don't teach how to budget. They don't teach how to write a resume. They don't teach how to find a job. But
yeah.
I got put in an apartment, told that 1 month of bills had been paid, and that it was up to me to find a job and start paying them after that.
Tabitha, I'm so sorry.
So I did kiss the ground when I got to Michigan, though. I will say that.
I bet.
I
Literally
bet.
did.
I
Like I know that
bet.
people make a joke about that, but I literally kissed the ground when I got off the plane in Michigan.
So did you ever reunite with your parents?
Yes, but it was several years later.
Okay. And have you guys ever had the conversation about your time there at Tranquility Bay?
No. And I'm currently disowned for speaking out about the program.
That sucks. I hate that. So how did that happen? Can I ask? Because I mean, I know I've had my
How did
own.
I get disowned?
Well, so the fact you started a program, why would that make them want to disown you? I mean, not a
Because
program, sorry, a support group. Let's call it that.
well, I started a nonprofit and then I started speaking out after being silent for 19 years. And I didn't tell them about the nonprofit at first because I knew how they were going to react. But no, it wasn't until a few months ago because I started the nonprofit in April of last year. And it was a few months ago, maybe October or November, I emailed my parents to tell them about the nonprofit. And it was an email that was also about them helping me co-sign to buy the house that I'm trying to buy. But the main part of them responding was just, you've made your stand, now we're making ours, and we don't want anything to do with you anymore. Goodbye, was
Oh my
basically the
gosh.
preface of the email. I'm not really bothered by it, honestly. And I'm not just saying that, it's just I kind of feel relieved a bit because now I don't have to try to pretend with them because we've never actually spoken about the program. The last time I brought it up with them was in 2009 when Tranquility Bay was shut down. And I called to tell them that it was shut down due to abuse allegations. And they tried to act like it wasn't, that's not why it was shut down. Because, and this is wild. So my case manager from when I was in Tranquility Bay, remember I left when I was in 2005 and this is 2009, had called them when it shut down to tell them not to believe the news stories about it. That's how in deep they are with these programs. It's wild.
Wow.
So the case manager was going around doing damage control for Tranquility.
It's 4 years after I left.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
it's crazy.
everyone who's been there, it just shows you just what a steep grab and hold that these places have on
How
families.
deep the manipulation goes. It really
Yeah,
does.
all the way back. They must have called everyone on there who's ever been there. It's so many of these places. And then here they're able to quickly get together a list of everyone who's been there and the family's phone numbers to call them. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and they probably just didn't want them to go back and like question their son or daughter and say, "Hey, were you ever abused while you were at this place?" Because they didn't want
Hmm.
to get sued. So that's probably why they had the caseworkers like calling the parents and being like, "Oh no, don't listen to it. It's all a lie."
Yeah. That it just it blows my mind. It's like, how do you not see that? And then recently, I can send you the document if you want, but recently I saw the email they sent out to all the parents when the program started shutting down with all the WASP programs, because they all closed like boom in 2009 due to the abuse allegations. And the end of WASP was in 2009. I saw the email they sent out, and it's just full of so much BS that I laughed when I read it. It was just excuse after excuse. Oh, don't believe what you're hearing on the news. We've only had one program closed due to anything other than voluntary. And the abuse allegations are false. And don't believe what your kid says, basically.
What's so interesting is that you have the level of like, this is awful. And then you hear something else, then you're like, okay, there's another level of awful that can come
I feel like
within.
it always gets worse.
Right.
Like, I feel like, oh, I've heard so many survivor stories, I can't possibly get any worse. But then every time I hear a new one, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm surprised, but yet not surprised because they will stop at no end. I just don't understand how there's not more public uproar
Mhm.
about the abuse at these programs, especially since the majority of them are
Mm,
US based, are US citizens, or you're not getting the right to process at all, or
yeah.
to a lawyer, or freedom of speech, or the right to refuse medication, and all this stuff. I just don't understand why there's not more public uproar about the abuse that over 4.5 million kids have suffered.
That's a really good point. While you were talking, so a couple of years ago, we went to Jamaica on a cruise. And I think that it's because it's kids that this stuff doesn't happen because they are under their parents' control and the parents are sometimes or adult. Let's just call it they're under the control of adults. And these adults control so much of so many things, the media, the newsletters that go out, all these different things. They control the narrative, the adults
Mm.
do. And I bring up, we went to Jamaica a couple of years ago because the ocean's so beautiful there. And the idea that if this ever happened to adults, the way you're talking about, like if we got off that boat in Jamaica and then immediately been strip searched in restraints, any single one of the things that you talked about, it would be chaos in the news and everywhere. Like, you're not going to believe what's happening to Americans or even adults or people. I mean, and the idea that just the level of manipulation. I mean, so let me ask you, when you were there, what were some of the things that you had to do? Can I ask, like, what did you guys have to do down there?
What I can remember from like our daily routine, which didn't change a whole lot unless it was like Sunday, is basically we got up super early, we got dressed, showered, all that stuff. So we showered like, I want to say 2 or 3 times a day. It's like always like 5-minute showers timed in cold water in like horse stalls, basically. So
Oh, wow.
like they're like bathroom stalls, but like
Yeah.
more of a
Wow.
raised thing. And like you can't have your shampoo and your body wash and stuff. The staff have to squeeze it into your hand because they were always worried people would try to drink it to kill themselves. You couldn't have liquid in the shower with you. You had to leave it outside, and a staff member would come by and squeeze a small amount into your hand.
So 3 times a day you had to take a shower, but was this like in your clothes or was it just open to everyone
I mean,
just
it had a
walk by?
door,
Oh, okay.
but
Like they walked by and gave you all the soap, but you were,
no,
why
but
did
they like reached over the door to like
oh,
put it in
okay.
your hand.
Okay.
But if you were misbehaving or they thought you were misbehaving, they could most definitely open the door and take you out and restrain you. I had seen it happen multiple times.
Oh my God.
I've seen it happen more times than I want to admit because they backtalk the staff. while they were in the shower. They took longer than 5 minutes in the shower, or they brought their shampoo and conditioner into the shower with them. Those are basically staff at Tranquility Bay for even minor infractions. If they thought you had an attitude about it, even if you didn't really, if they said you did, you could get pulled out of line, get pulled out of the shower, get pulled out of the classroom, and get restrained. I mean, you're in a foreign country, and our parents had to sign over custody, 51% of us. So to be in Jamaica, to be in a different country, our parents don't really have much say after that. And because it's in another country, I know that a lot of the programs in the country get away with a lot too. I know that it's as horrific, maybe even more so in some of them. But when you're in another country and there's no US regulations and no US laws, there's really no due process. They don't have to follow any laws. And you know that they're paying, we know for sure they were paying off the people around the facility, because if somebody would try to run, the people around the facility would turn them in.
Yeah.
And get a reward for it. And we know that for a fact. You have to imagine if they would do that, they're probably paying off the Jamaican government to look the other way too.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but I mean, so yeah, taking a shower, breakfast, the food. I mean, I know food seems like a really small thing to complain about in the big picture of everything, but the food they fed us, I probably nowadays looking back, I wouldn't even feed a dog. Like I'm talking about fish with the scales still on, with the heads, pork, like no flavor to anything. And the things that did have flavor were the gross things. I'm talking about like pork with the fat and the skin still, like hairs on it, like the little pork hairs.
No.
I did not have an eating disorder, but I was super skinny back then. I had a really high metabolism. And so they automatically assumed I had an eating disorder. And at Tranquility Bay, if you're deemed to have a eating disorder, you have to eat 100% of every meal, no matter what. So because I was so skinny, they tried to make me eat 100% of my meal every time. And you have to realize that this is like fish that has scales on it, pork that has hair sticking out of it and stuff. So I got in a lot of trouble for that.
my
Powdered
gosh.
milk, the nutritional was not there. And I think that although we don't have much proof, a lot of the people that I went to Tranquility Bay with nowadays have a lot of health problems, including myself. And I think that has a lot to do with the lack of nutrition, them forcing us to drink. We had to drink so much water every day. And if you read news articles now, you'll hear about Jamaican water. It's toxic. Even the Jamaicans don't drink it. And the lack of medical care. A lot of the survivors that I'm friends with have autoimmune disorders. My kidneys failed for no reason. The doctors have no idea why my kidneys failed. It's not hereditary. I didn't have damage to my kidneys. Both of them failed. And although I have no proof, I think it was the lack of nutrition, the water, and the lack of medical care while I was in Jamaica. After 4.5 years of proper nutrition, no medical care, and drinking that toxic Jamaican water, I'm not a doctor, but it being the cause of not only my medical problems, but the medical problems of all the other survivors I know. Because the statistics of how many of my survivor sisters have autoimmune or some other kind of similar disease, the numbers add up to it having to be Jamaica. I mean, that's the only common element that all of us shared. We all live in different parts of the country. We all had different upbringings. We all had different lives afterwards. It's the only common thing we have. And then we go to school, no internet, of course. So it's all just sitting at a desk. I mean, we did have a computer that you could like type things up at, but there was no internet access.
They wouldn't want the word to get out that things are happening.
We exercised a lot. It was always mandatory to exercise. We did have a pool, but we only got to go to it. I want to say maybe in the 4.5 years I was there, I went to it 8 times because it was a whole process. They had to get permission, had to direct the boys to not walk by the pool, all this kinds of fun stuff. Because heaven forbid a guy look at a girl, a teenage guy look at a teenage girl. Like, yeah, heaven forbid.
Yeah, can't have.
They acted like looking at someone of the opposite sex would get you pregnant.
Oh yes. Yeah, that's how like me and Susie were raised that way. It's like, yeah, don't look at the opposite sex or something is gonna happen.
The only differences about Sundays is they were a little bit more relaxed. We'd watch like a movie, a pre-approved movie. We'd write letters home. every night was snack night where you got like little cookies, but you had to be a level 2 in order to get the cookies. So if you were level 1, you were just SOL and didn't get a nighttime snack. So that's really the only reason I ever got level 2 while I was there, was for the cookies.
Nice.
It
were
give
pretty
you a
good.
little bit of an incentive there. Yeah.
Well,
So you mentioned some of the people that you're in contact with now that went to the facility with you as a teenager. How did you get in touch with this group that was kids at the time and now y'all are adults? Did you find each other on Facebook, or how did y'all like reconnect?
Facebook.
awesome.
Yep.
That is awesome.
You gotta love
So you
social
have
media.
a support group for everyone? There's a support group.
Some of them I've been friends with since 2009, since it shut down. But even since, I guess MySpace would have been back then. So I guess maybe some of them even on MySpace. I sound like an old person on back in my day on MySpace.
I know. Well, we're right there with you.
But yeah, all the connections I've made with the people I went to Tranquility Bay with was all over social media. Just looking up names I could
Cool.
remember and trying to
Yeah.
find them. Recently, I've connected a lot more because I'm posting more on social media now that I'm running a nonprofit, and people are reaching out to me and being like, "Oh, I finally found you." I wasn't hiding, but I guess it was a lot harder to find me than it is now. It's all social media. I mean, people complain about social media a lot, but for me, it's been a great way to connect with people for all over the country. And it's really the best way to get a hold of another survivor and then go from there to find communication sources to be able to keep in touch.
So can you tell me about your nonprofit? So you started that last year, and what made you decide to want to start a nonprofit, especially for this, even with all this stuff that you could pick out of your life, whether it's the foster care system or the adoptive home, but you also have this other thing that happened. And what I'm getting at is that we find so many people that have been through so many other things, but this is the one thing, the TTI is the one thing, that's what is the moment or the pivot where they decide, I'm going to work towards ending this or reforming this, changing this.
Yeah. So I was really hard for other survivors to get on the phone. Over a year ago, I had survivors that would try to get me on the phone and I wouldn't get on. I just told people I'd been at a boarding school and they didn't really know the intensity of what I'd been through. After so many times of trying to bring it up and trying to get people to understand what I was trying to say and people not understanding, I kind of gave up. I gave up telling my story. I gave up explaining what it was, that it got shut down, that I was abused, that I was traumatized. And I kind of just buried it in the back of my memory for a while. And when survivors would try to reach out to me, I would just kind of ignore it, really. I would give vague responses. And it was really hard for other survivors to get me on the phone or to get me to talk. But last year, when the program came out, I did not and still have not watched the program. That's not really the reason that I got into it. When I started, I was already a part of several survivor groups, but they weren't very active. They were kind of quiet. I think everybody was at a point where everybody that I knew had been out 20 years or close to 20 years, and they got tired of trying to explain it to people, and they got tired of trying to make their voices heard because nobody was listening and nobody was caring. And once the program came out, those groups on Facebook blew up. They went from 0 to 100 in 60 seconds. And I think the community coming alive is what drew me in. I've always had that sense of needing community and being around other survivors. And I think that really stems from the fact that I've never had a stable family. I've never had stable friends because I was sent to Jamaica when I was 12. So any friends I had then, by the time I made it out and could contact them again, they'd already been through all the formative years and they didn't really remember me. And we weren't close anymore. And I think once the community kind of came back alive, it intrigued me. And I actually was asked to join an advocacy group that was planning on doing a documentary to Tranquility Bay and traveling to Tranquility Bay and doing a documentary. They wanted me as part of the group because I had probably the longest residency at Tranquility Bay. There's a lot of people that have longer residencies in multiple programs or at different programs, but at Tranquility Bay itself, I think I have the longest residency there. So that perspective and the perspective of knowing it pretty much in and out, they wanted my perspective on it. They thought my story would be good for the documentary. But that kind of turned sideways when the leader of that group became militant, and it became more about, and I do want to see the TTI taken down, but it became more of let's take down the TTI, and it became aggressive. And so I decided to kind of distance myself from that. And then I realized that I would be better suited to support survivors. As much as I want the TTI to end, there are a lot of advocacy groups, and there's a lot of people working in advocacy trying to shut down the TTI, whether legislative or you got Paris Hilton, you got On Silence, Breaking Code Silence, that are all advocacy and trying to shut down the TTI. And I realized that as much support as I needed, there was not a group that was primarily focused on supporting and providing resources for survivors. So that is why I started Survivors Unrestrained. I wanted a place where we weren't focused on shutting down the TTI, that we were more focused on the survivors that the TTI has created and giving them resources. Because I don't know about you guys with your experiences, but I've always felt behind, like behind my peers with just everything in life. Like people that I've known for my whole life, it just feels like they're leaps and bounds ahead of me, because during my formative years, I was stuck in the program as they got to live their lives and learn the things that normal teenagers have to learn. But me, I didn't. And then I got out and I had to survive. I didn't get to learn all those things because I've been focusing the last 20 years on just surviving life and trying to make money and trying to handle relationships and trying to do all that fun stuff that we call life. So I haven't had a chance to catch up, so to speak. So I realized that we needed a community and an organization that was focused on giving resources and support to survivors, not only in a financial aspect, but also in educational resources, community resources, because you have survivors out there that don't have relationships with their families, don't have friends, and they have to go to the hospital and have a surgery, but there's nobody in the waiting room waiting for them to find out if they made it out of surgery. And that might seem like a small thing to some people, but
it's huge.
Feels like it's only a small thing to the people who have somebody in the waiting room waiting on them after surgery.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really about creating that family feeling, especially the one that I've always felt like I've been lacking. And I think that what encouraged me is that I am married to an amazing male, and he has an amazing family who, from the time that I married him, have treated me like their own daughter. Just an example, at Christmas, they spend the same amount on me as they do their kids. It's the same budget. It's never been different. It's never, I don't feel like the daughter-in-law, I feel like their daughter. And I think that gave me the boost that I needed. And not only that, my husband is amazing, very supportive, and very just right around, all around great guy.
You said before that documentary, the program came out on Netflix, the survivor community on social media was kind of quiet, right? But then this documentary came out and it lit a fire under everyone's butts, right? Like, oh my gosh, like, look at this documentary. Like, it reignited this passion that y'all have for one another and your experiences to bring awareness. And so I think it's amazing that you are on here talking about your story and your experience within the TTI, because this is going to go out on all the social media platforms. It's going to go out on YouTube. We're going to share the heck out of it. Hopefully that will also ignite and light a fire under everyone's butts again, to be like, okay, we need to talk about this. Let's bring awareness. Let's see how we can help the groups that are out there find each other and bring awareness to what's going on and make real changes. And I think that's really awesome that you mentioned that. So that's the hope that we have for our podcast, is just helping survivors, bringing awareness and getting those changes made. Wow. I think it's awesome what you're doing. And how can people find you, right? How can people find the organization that you're involved in? And how can people reach out if they need to get some help or some resources?
So a lot of the resources that we're looking to provide aren't actually active yet. We are still a new organization, so we're working on funding, but we do have the Survivors Unrestrained support group on Facebook that has almost 950 members on it of survivors from all different TTI programs. We have Family Foundation survivors in there. We have Ivy Ridge survivors in there. We have even the smaller ones, the wilderness programs all across the country. We have survivors from all kinds of TTI programs in there, but it's a really supportive support group. And then we're also currently planning a West Coast road trip at the end of April, beginning of May, because to me and to my mission, I think survivor meetups are so important to the healing process. And it's part of our No More Isolation initiative, because something that survivors tend to do, and the program coming out and awakening the thing proves that isolation is a real thing among survivors, is getting survivors out of isolation, because suicide is a real thing in with survivors and with traumatized kids with that are now adults and that have that CPTSD. So our goal is to get meetups across the country going so that we can get people out of their houses into an environment where they feel like they can be heard and understood, because we're going to understand them, because we are a by survivor for survivor organization. So the people, most of the people in our organization are survivors, whether it's TTI or we even have some that aren't leadership but associated that are IFB. And I think because a lot of IFB survivors are actually TTI survivors because of the TTIs that were in the IFB. So it's a lot of crossover there. There's quite a lot of crossover there. And so we're doing a West Coast road trip that is all over our Survivors Unrestrained Facebook page and our Survivors Unrestrained support group. So we'll be going to Oregon, Washington, and 4 stops in California. Ian, he's my secretary, also our outreach coordinator, will be going to Colorado, Utah, and Ohio as well. A lot of people don't realize that that's kind of an important thing for survivors out of isolation, so they're not all in their head and don't feel alone anymore. Because one of the common causes of suicide among survivors is they just feel alone. They feel like they don't have anybody to talk to, because normal members of society that aren't trauma victims, that didn't go to the program or didn't go to a facility like we did, can try, but they just don't get it. There's nothing like the experience that we went to when we were in the facility and the things that we went through. And it doesn't matter what facility, but it still has the same basic concept and still the same basic thing, and feel like I'm heard and feel like I'm understood. So it's so important for survivors to get out of isolation and to get into a meetup. We're working on our empowerment education initiative, which will provide help with GED prep, GED, vocational, and eventually 5 to 10 year plan scholarships for survivors.
I love it.
So those are the ones we're working on currently. We are currently working on our website, but we can be reached at survivorsunrestrained.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so donations to Survivors Unrestrained are tax deductible.
We have the process of healing, which is healing module. We have a podcast, but we have the process of healing, which are modules for healing to jumpstart your healing after trauma. And I would love to see if we could set something up for you guys where we have it. We have a design where you could do, there's 16 modules, but we could do something like the first 4 for you guys. Like we've divided it up to where the first 4 could tide someone over until they need therapy, or could help them until they're able to get, because sometimes there's that stopgap between when you recognize I want help, but then you have to wait. The modules are only like an hour long. But I got to show you, we just got it today. It's our book on
it turned out so good.
It's the modules of each thing has a section for like questions, like, so this is self-analysis, self-plan. This is the quizzes. We have quizzes and they're all research based, but it's all stuff for helping. Like this one has for helping, like being able to know how to create, like have conversations with people, start basic connections. Cause you're right. Like so many people have like the interpersonal skills, well, like the importance of it, types of communicators, types of,
I've had a lot of survivors reach out about something that they wish they had help with when they got out of the program was the interpersonal skills.
Well, and so like how to help with emotional regulation, like self-regulation and mindfulness, and dealing with how to ground yourself in the present when you're having really bad flashbacks and stuff. And I would love for us to see if we could do something where, like, even the first four, like I said, could, I think, really help, because that's like how to build a safe environment, how to help with emotional regulation, how to establish boundaries where it seems so hard when you've been mistreated to set that boundary up, you know what I mean? And then also the idea, what is trauma and the biology behind it and how it affects your brain. So at least, again, we call it jumpstart your healing, where people get an idea of how they could help. But then the later ones have meaning in life and how to build your social support group, the right kind that's healthy and stuff like
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah, but we should talk, because if we could set where you guys could just, for your group, have access to that. Like I said, they're only like an hour long. We have this is a printed one. We put it in a magazine format, but we have a PDF too.
I mean, I'm open to anything because we have so many survivors and each one
Yeah.
takes something a little different to heal.
That's
Everybody
right.
has different healing things. And I think that having something like that would help the survivors.
Yeah, well, and it's hard because if it's back to the idea of self-paced. I know that's such a terrible word for education, but where it's easy, if you've been in a program where there was a therapist, but they were awful, it makes you really distrustful of that. So if you have
Right.
the chance to learn that for yourself and the skills to help yourself,
Yeah.
and in the safety of your own home, the privacy of your own home, or you could just listen to it on an audio or a video. Either way, it's just, and then you got the workbook there for yourself. It's something that you can do at your own pace, or not at all, or you can, but where then again, if you feel like later, like I could use some extra help, you've already got a good foundation.
That sounds like an awesome thing you put together.
Yeah.
And having all kinds of different therapies because everybody heals a little differently. Like me
Right.
personally, I know that I can't see a therapist because I start shaking and my anxiety goes through the roof just because of the experiences I had for 4.5 years at Tranquility Bay.
Right.
So
Right.
my healing process is a little bit different than somebody who goes to therapy. I deal with things in my own
Yeah.
way. So everybody has their own healing. And I think that would be really healing for someone like me who doesn't want to see a therapist, whether
Yeah.
virtual or in person, but
Right.
still is working on the healing process.
Yeah. So after we're done here, since I've got your email address where I sent the link, I could send you, just for you, if you wanted, where I could send you the link to the 4 modules and the workbook, and you yourself could look at them and decide for your organization if that's something you would want to offer. Because you're right, the parents that you did have should have protected you, and the adults too, and they didn't. And so now you get the chance to save yourself, do that for yourself. And these other kids that are, you're right, are still stuck sometimes in those formative years and that mistreatment. I love what you're doing, Tabitha. I think it's really like so inspiring and encouraging. And I mean, I just think you're so cool.
Thank you. I don't know if I've ever been called cool before, but thank you.
Amazing.
Well, in our book, you are.
Yes.
Oh, well, I think you guys are pretty cool too.
Thank
Aw,
you.
yeah.
Basically, I want Survivors Unrestrained to be like the VA for survivors.
And that's a great way to put it.
The only thing I would add is that any survivors watching this, just know that your story matters and your voice matters, and that you are worth more than the program made you believe that you're worth, and you didn't deserve the abuse that you went through, no matter how many times people, parents, program members told you that you did. You don't, and your voice matters, and you're loved, even if I don't know you by name. I love every survivor out there because we all went through something that only each other will understand. And I'm always available. My inbox is always open.
Healing is a process, a journey to be experienced, not just a destination.
You are not alone in this. It's okay to take your time, explore different perspectives, and find what resonates with you. Healing takes courage, and we believe in you.
Together, we can enjoy the ride.